Thank you to our sponsor, Gamers Grass. G'day everyone, it's Tabletop time and I'm Jen, and I'm here to bring you another cathedral video. The last one did such an amazing job, but I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve and a couple more things to show you guys. After having some thoughts about how I wanted the front of this cathedral to look, I wanted to make it look alive in more ways than one. Toying around with some ways to do this, I couldn't really help but look past the fact that a lot of buildings had ivy growing on them. You can see in a lot of churches and cathedrals this beautiful ivy just growing on top of the buildings. This is a feature that I absolutely want to include in this terrain piece. And luckily enough, I had some pretty good ideas how to do this. The front needed to look untouched or that nature was taking over, but the inside was just complete ruins. In the previous video, the stained glass windows had some representation from the Sisters of Battle, the Space Marines, and the Imperial Guard. But I think I really want to make this cathedral dedicated to the Sisters of Battle. It's a personal project that I've been working on for quite a long time, and I'll go into depth a bit later in this video. Now that all my planning is done, I'm going to do a jazzer and dabble before I dive. I was super keen on painting the front of this cathedral. The front of this cathedral is absolutely gorgeous, and it's a piece I've been eyeing off for a really long time. Not only that, I also wanted to paint the side pieces as well, so that the fully front of the cathedral would be finished and ready to go. So while I was painting up these pieces of the cathedral, David and I were having a big discussion about how we would actually use this board. We came to the conclusion that we wanted this to be a kill team board. Now, I enjoy the 40k universe, but the rules can get a bit hectic for me sometimes, but Kill Team is way up my alley. It's a smaller army and simpler game rules, so I'm able to follow along a lot easier. And after watching the match between Jazza and Dave, I was pretty keen to get in on the action. I have my Sisters of Battle army at home that I personally love a lot. They're the first army I ever wanted, but unfortunately when I started the hobby, they were only available in metal, and even then they were incredibly rare to come by. I was turned away pretty fast, and I moved on to a different army. I moved on to Dark Elder or Jakari now. But in my heart, I still wanted those Sisters of Battle more than anything. They are just super cool. The whole nunnery thing, I'm totally into it. They're so unique and they're just beautiful models. So when the new collection came out a couple of years ago, I had to get the collector's edition. It came with the rulebook and everything. It's just a gorgeous kit and I'm so happy I got my hands on it. But because this board is going to be a kill team board, I know I'm going to have to get my hands on some kill team novitiates. These are the Sisters of Battle kill team that I will be able to use on this board. As soon as I saw these come out, again, I was captivated. These models looked so cool, and I'm a bit of a fantasy nerd as well as a sci-fi nerd. So mixing the two together, nothing better. So when thinking about a kill team board and I wanted them to be in this cathedral, I was thinking about who could they possibly fight? Well, Sisters of Battle, they're kind of like Space Marines, and what army do Space Marines hate the most, potentially? Probably Chaos, right? And there's someone in the studio that's been getting a little bit friendly with an Alfarius, the Alpha Legion. And maybe I could challenge him to a battle. So I'm super keen to start these as a project at some point. If you guys think you'd be interested in watching me paint them up, maybe customize them a little bit, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Now at the front of the cathedral, all base coated and finished, it was just time to paint some of those little details. Painting the metal like I do in my signature painterly style, and also the fleur-de-lis on the front of the cathedral. Had two more pieces of the cathedral to paint up, either side of the main piece, and just with a snap of my fingers, they were done. I knew there was two types of ways I wanted to go about creating this ivy look. I either wanted to use really thin craft wire to create the swirls and curvature of the ivy climbing up the wall, or I wanted to use something a bit messy and fine with really delicate lines going through it, like there are multiple branches of ivy. I found this really cool twine that we had at the studio, and it was brown as well, which just made it perfect to use. For my first dabble, I decided to start with this craft wire that again, we had in the studio, luckily enough. I slowly wrapped the twine around the wire to give it some texture and shaped it into a sort of ivy climbing shape that I thought would look nice. After measuring it up against the actual cathedral wall, I didn't like this at all. It looked too much like a craft project and I needed something a bit more natural with fiber. Luckily enough, the string itself was actually perfect. I could pull the threads away and create multiple strands out of the one. I could combine them and I could even change the color of the actual twine itself. This was gonna be perfect, but I knew it wasn't gonna play super nice. So the first thing I did was pull apart the multiple strands and glue them down onto this glass plate that we had. This would ensure that the twine would stay in the shape that I needed it to. Once this was dry, I gave it a quick spray of a Vallejo brown that we have. But again, after a bit of trial and error and actually looking up some images online, ivy isn't actually brown, it's green the whole way through. So I went over the top with a green, which gave it this mottled look, and I was way happier with this. To make the actual ivy leaves themselves, I knew there was a couple of options, but I couldn't look past Gamer's Grass laser cut plants. Particularly the Lords and Ladies were perfect for this project. They look like little ivy leaves themselves and have stems long enough that I'm able to wrap them around the actual twine and make it look more organic. I used a couple of other of their laser cut plants, including the dumb cane and the elephant just to create some variants. This is an alien planet after all, it didn't all have to look the same. I could pick and choose in whatever I liked. Overall, I loved the way these turned out. This was super simple, and I think it actually looks really effective. Whoa, stop right there, Jen. We've got to talk about today's sponsor, Gamer's Grass. Gamer's Grass is one of the products that we have here at the studio, and I am super happy for them to be our sponsor for today's video. As soon as I came up with the idea of this project, I knew that the laser cut plants that Gamer's Grass had would be perfect for this. Not only do they have their laser cut plants, they also have a huge range of grass tufts that are perfect for any type of project. These tufts come in various sizes, so if you're making something as tiny as a water feature or as huge as a gaming board, there is something to suit all your needs. But their products don't end there. They have a beautiful range of flowers that can just add a pop of color to any type of scenery. And lastly, if you're not super into basing but you want to base your models, well, they've got you covered. They even have pre-made bases so you don't have to go to all the trouble and you can just order them straight online. But if you're feeling creative like me, they have a ton of different products and something to suit your needs. Whether it's making water resin bases or making ivy for your building, there is something to suit every hobbyist's needs. So if you're looking to get creative with your basing or your terrain projects, I cannot recommend Gamer's Grass enough. Links to their page will be in the description below, and thank you so much again for Gamer's Grass for sponsoring this video. And with that all being said, let's get back to our cathedral, shall we? I want to have a piece of terrain that I can put the ivy on and it's just going to look amazing. I tried to look for a statue, a 40k statue that I could use on my mini factory or just something online, and I couldn't find anything that worked. It was either really garish or it just was in a really weird pose. Nothing was working. And then I remembered that there was a Sister of Battle terrain piece that Games Workshop had previously released. I really, really wanted it. It was perfect, but it was like $200 and I didn't know if I could get it in stock. And then I remembered I knew someone that has a hobby store and could probably help me out. And luckily enough, here she is. This is exactly what I was looking for. I think that this is gonna be an amazing piece of terrain, and I'm actually gonna add on top of this. Again, with my hobby store friend, I got him to print me a little 3D fountain. So hopefully she's gonna sit on top like this and be a little...
Who are you calling your hobby store friend?
It was Dave. I think that this is going to be an awesome piece of terrain, so I'm really excited to start painting this up. So with my fountain all printed and my statue ready to go, it was time to prime these babies down. So I sprayed the fountain in a grey colour to start with and the statue in a cream colour from Vallejo. I really wanted to experiment with using contrast colours on these particular pieces. Because there's stonework, I really wanted to emphasise some of the contrast between the two. Stone is quite dark at points and then quite light at others, that a combination of dry brushing and washing it just makes it look so good. I definitely wanted to keep the statue looking ethereal. I'd like to think that someone comes and cleans it. It's out front of the cathedral, so it wouldn't necessarily be destroyed, and maybe someone takes really, really good care of it. I'm thinking in another video, I don't know, maybe it'll succumb to the taint of chaos. Let us know what you think. Should we maybe mess up the beautiful, wonderful, a lot of time I spent model with some, I don't know, graffiti and stuff? That'd be fun, wouldn't it? So I continued on with my painting process, trying to give the statue a beautiful marbled look. If I was gonna wrap ivy around this, I wanted to be contrasting and still evoke this feeling of peace and beauty. pieces were glued together, Dave took a look at the bottom of the fountain and he thought I could add a mosaic to the bottom of it. And again, too much work. But I have to do it because it'll look way too good. Dang it. So I spent my time trying to mark out a fleur-de-lis mosaic. This wasn't difficult to do, but I spent a bit of time just trying to make sure it looked like a proper mosaic by making sure some of the pieces were lighter than others and kind of keeping in some of the geometry that you would see in a mosaic. This would be placed at the bottom of the fountain with some terrain effects and some moss put on top. Again, this moss is from Gamer's Grass and this was perfect. Moss was absolutely something I wanted to include in this project and we had a huge packet of it here at the studio. When it was time for my resin pour, I was thinking about the color I wanted it to be. I had to think about the reason that it would still be used, if it was even used at all, but I knew I wanted to include some plant life in there. So with a vision in mind, I made up my resin and I decided to go with just a kind of murky but blue color. I wanted it still to be pretty and not disgusting. The plant life lived there, maybe some creatures as well, but it doesn't look like someone puts their trash in there, let's put it that way. So once the resin was all mixed up, I just poured it in and left it for 24 hours to cure. So with my resin cured, I decided I wanted to give the fountain a little bit of wear and tear. I wanted to put some mud on the sides of the fountain. I'd used the same product before in the actual cathedral itself, but I'd painted it over black and grey. This time I wanted to keep it brown. Again, there was organic life growing outside of the cathedral, so I thought keeping it brown would actually look really good. And it was kind of a big brain moment for me. Gamer's Grass had these laser cut plants called Monstera, and they looked pretty much like a lily pad. They were perfect. Like most pond life, there's usually a little bit of colour growing in there. I added some pink flowers just to give it that little pop of colour in the actual pond. I grabbed some of that moss and just tufted up some of those areas where I thought it would be really compacted and just a perfect place for moss to thrive. For the last little finishing touches, I tore off some of the petals and scattered this in the water to look like maybe someone had been there recently and had thrown flowers into the pond itself. Now it was time to finally drape my ivy. I was very excited for this step, but I was also super nervous. This was either gonna make or break this piece of terrain, but I knew I had to go for it. I'd spent so much time making this ivy, I knew it had to be worth it. I super glued everything into place and kind of kept it away from her face, focusing more on her wings and her back. So again, if someone's tending to this statue, they're keeping the face nice and clean, but allowing her wings some growth for the ivy just to make it look like some life is still around. I also wanted to include this at the front of the cathedral. I wanted the ivy to be growing at the very base of the cathedral, but it wasn't reaching inside. Everything inside needed to look dead and decrepit, but outside was just thriving with life. And with these pieces of terrain all done, I'm super excited to show you the final piece, and I hope you guys like it just as much as I do. And there you have it. There is the front of the cathedral and how I use Gamers Grass products in order to make this really come to life. I'm really enjoying these projects and finding ways to create life in such a sad and dark world. I think it's really important to have a blend of the two to still have hope in a hopeless world. And I think I really achieved that in this project. This looks so good. I couldn't be happier. I cannot wait for this kill team board to be finished so my Sisters of Battle and Dave's Chaos Cultists can fight it out together. And speaking of, if you'd like to check out my Sisters of Battle army, consider joining our Patreon, where Dave, Murray, and myself all sit down and we've started critiquing each other's paid jobs and ways we can improve on our hobby, as well as our mini club review where you guys can submit your own projects for some critique or just a general feedback. And that's another piece of the cathedral done. I'm probably going to do the middle next time and then the board itself and actually putting it all together, which is super exciting. There's so much work to do, but I'm loving every step of the way. But I am kind of getting a little bit hungry. These plants here, I don't know if, I mean, they're kind of like Gamers Grass plants. They're like... Before we end this video, I'm just going to quickly show you guys where we're at with the cathedral, how much we've done and how much more we've got to go. So this is what it's looking like right now. It's looking really good. There's still a few more pieces to do, but I'm really happy with the way it's coming out. But I want to know what you guys think. With each video that comes out, I'm going to try and do a concept for each of those videos, something a bit different for each piece of terrain. I'm thinking of maybe doing some like graffiti or something, but I don't know. Leave a comment below if you have any awesome ideas that you think we should incorporate into these videos. I'd love to know your thoughts. Otherwise, have a good day, guys. Bye.